This video is an interview with Megan Gordon, who is the manager of Equitable Transition for Pembina Institute, which has just released a new report titled Drilling Down Oil and Gas Jobs in Transition. Now, one of the arguments I've heard for years in Alberta is that as oil and gas jobs decline, clean energy jobs coming behind them will not be, there won't be as many of them, and they will not be the same kind of wages. Alberta has some of the highest wages in Canada. Megan takes issue with that, and here's the interview. Megan, let's now talk about the opportunities for workers in some of that comes from the decarbonization of oil and gas. And maybe you could walk us through that.
Sure, Markham. I think what's important to note here is that, of course, with alignment with Canada's objectives around decarbonization, there is opportunity for industry to employ more workers through CCUS and methane abatement. But what we're really finding in this report that we produced is that it's really just a marginal number of jobs that are expected to be created as a result of that. And really, we want to place emphasis on a really holistic economic diversification strategy. We recognize that Albertans are, they're getting tired of the resource roller coaster, and introducing new initiatives and preferential policy and ecosystems can really help spur new creation, new industry, and development in other areas as well.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point. I'll be honest with you, I was shocked by the small number of jobs we're talking about. So in carbon capture and storage, maybe 1,000 to 3,000. Methane abatement, that's basically reducing emissions from natural gas production and transportation, 1,000 to 2,000. When you think about the jobs that we were talking about earlier, loss of 50,000, 40,000 jobs, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 jobs is not very much. And your point that's made in your report is that even those job opportunities depend on really strong federal and provincial climate regulations.
Yeah, that's right. And as we've seen some inconsistency in what industry is talking about in terms of their, projected projects around these different initiatives around CCUS pipelines, and the actual execution. So while, it's great to talk about decarbonization of the oil and gas sector is always going to be a part of the solution. It's not going to disappear overnight, but we need to look beyond that.
Let's talk about clean economy job growth, because we had last summer, about a year ago, the provincial government of Premier Danielle Smith introduced a moratorium on wind and solar development. And then in February brought in some new rules. And then there have been further new rules introduced since then, new regulations. And the consensus, I think, from the folks I've interviewed is that basically the province has kneecapped the renewable industry in Alberta. That could have been a big part of clean economy job growth, right?
We certainly think so, Markham, and it is unfortunate when government gets in the way of these burgeoning industries that have really taken off as a result of these strong market signals globally. So one of the things that we're seeing from the International Energy Agency, they put out an annual World Energy Employment Report, and they show that clean energy jobs are growing at about 3.8% faster than the rest of the economy, only growing at about 2.2%. And growth in fossil fuel employment is expected to taper off according to their modeling, while jobs in clean energy are expected to surge. And so, renewables is one of those areas where we can see more growth if government chooses to step out of the way and allow for some of those more opportunities around entrepreneurs and small medium enterprises to thrive in an environment that really has those preferential conditions.
I was looking at your list of other opportunities, EV manufacturing, low carbon manufacturing, hydrogen, critical minerals, building retrofits. All of those represent various levels of opportunity. Alberta has already gone down the road, some with hydrogen. We're seeing in BC, they've got a hydrogen cluster there of company manufacturing and technical companies. But a lot of this stuff it seems to be stuck in low gear. It just can't get into that through the valley of death and begin to scale up for commercialization. I just thought I'd get your views on that.
Right. I think, we're not going to be able to predict the future of these different industries, but again, it's really that sort of holistic investment in all of the different economic opportunities that we want to see as part of a clean energy transition. And I think that's a good thing that there's not necessarily a one-to-one replacement ratio for jobs in a province like Alberta that depends so heavily on the oil and gas sector. It really makes for a more resilient economy at the end of the day. It's really cushioned from those global market fluctuations that Albertans are all too know will impact the sector. And so there are, again, those preferential policy ecosystems that can sort of get over that initial investment hesitation that we see as we wait for the markets to favor those areas. And as Janetta said earlier, really like the snowball starts to take momentum. And so there's a number of different things and opportunities to implement some of those interventions that can support industry. And we have an opportunity to do that. So the Government of Canada passed last year the Sustainable Jobs Act and is planning on producing, as part of the legislation, a Sustainable Jobs Action Plan by the end of the year. And so with the right kinds of supports for workers, training, different kinds of investment tax credits that have labor conditions, including, prevailing wage standards and apprenticeships, minimum quotas, we can really see the social benefit of those government investments and taxpayer dollars maximized.
I'm going to take this opportunity to promote my favorite hobby horse, which is turning bitumen into carbon fiber and other advanced materials. And I guess that comes under low carbon manufacturing. I mean, we are literally a year, maybe two at the outside from Alberta Innovates having a commercial process to turn bitumen into carbon fiber and into materials. And it seems to me that if you're looking at declining demand at the global level and in some of your key markets, and you have a process to use the very hydrocarbon that generates most of your royalty revenues and most of your employment, which is bitumen, that would be something that the industry and government would be all over now so that you could scale it up so it's ready to be a domestic market for bitumen as fuel markets begin to decline. I don't, just curious if you spent any time investigating the bitumen beyond combustion as it's known.
Right. Yeah. I think on that piece, we didn't do a deep dive on the potential of that specific industry, but I think what we do know, what we've been hearing from Albertans is that they do want to get more value out of the resources that they're endowed with. And, that means helping to incentivize some of that secondary manufacturing and value added manufacturing of raw materials. And really, instead of shipping, these unrefined products overseas, which also often results in shipping jobs overseas. And that's true of not just the petroleum industry, but as well of critical minerals. And, we really see Alberta having this preferential geology for a burgeoning critical mineral industry. And the lack of investment and the lack of momentum we see there is potentially a trade-off of government hyper-focusing on a single area of industry growth. So it's really, again, thinking a little more creatively about the opportunities that we have ahead of us.